Okay, what are the biggest misconceptions between living in the city of Chicago and the suburbs? This is a common question I receive as a top realtor here in the western suburbs of Chicago. So I'm gonna share those misconceptions with you. If you're considering a move here, if you're trying to decide between Chicago or the suburbs, or let's just say you live in the city and you're trying to figure out whether it makes sense to move to the suburbs, this is the video for you. Before we jump in, as a reminder, I'm Mike Thornton. I have a top real estate team here in Wheaton, which is a western suburb of Chicago. If you'd like more information about our team or how we could potentially assist you in real estate matters, our information's in the description. Please like, subscribe if this is helpful, but let's jump right into this. This is interesting, and I was actually surprised at a little bit of the data. I generally speaking knew exactly what I wanted to talk about, but even looking into the data, especially on the cost or the average sale price in Chicago versus the suburbs, I was a little bit surprised. But I think the major misconception is that it's cheaper to live in the suburbs. The city of Chicago is seen as a very expensive place. Real estate costs are high, and obviously there are some pockets, of course, that are very expensive in the suburbs. But generally speaking, the thought is that, hey, I can get a much cheaper house. But when we look at the data, it's actually not telling the same story. So first misconception is that you get more cheaper home price in the suburbs. So let's look at the data. Chicago, the rolling 12 month, the average sale price is $517,000, and that's up 7%. DuPage County, which is the second largest county to Cook County, which is the western suburbs, the average sale price is right about the same, $522,000, and that's up close to 5%. So the average sale price rolling 12 months is the same in the western suburbs versus the city of Chicago. Now, of course, do you get more square footage for that same buck? Absolutely, no doubt. Do you get more land for that same buck? Absolutely, no doubt. I will also say, do you also have potentially, in addition to that $517,000 place in Chicago, do you have a huge HOA fee that covers the buildings, maintenance, staff, security, all that stuff? Yes, probably. And do you have, maybe even you pay additional for deeded parking, things like that, where you have to purchase your parking spot? That's all real. However, if you just look at sale price, there's actually not much of a difference between the city and the suburbs. So let's go into the second misconception, and that's that you get a lot more space in the suburbs versus the city. Now, I just mentioned, do you get a bigger yard, things like that? Absolutely. However, I will say this is potentially a misconception because the city, there are so many great options for communal spaces in these buildings. Not many people know this if they haven't lived in the city, but yes, you might live in a condo or you might live in an apartment. However, there's so much space in these buildings where they have pool tables, they have yoga studios, they have gyms. A lot of the buildings have rooftops where you can enjoy the outdoors even. They may even have turf set up so you can have some grassy spaces, things like that to take your pets. There's more space than you would think in a lot of these buildings in Chicago. And that's not even to mention parks and things like that in the city. The city has done a great job to be as accessible as possible, to enjoy the outside as much as possible, to have space to entertain, to have people over. And many of these buildings even have, in these communal spaces, they have kitchens set up so you can throw parties, so you can reserve the space, or you have spots you can even work, things like that. Just know that if you're moving to the city of Chicago, you're not just going to have the space in your apartment or condo in some of these high rises, you're gonna have much more space to take advantage of. So that's misconception number two, is that you don't have any space to navigate in the city. You'll have some much smaller space to live potentially, but then you'll have some communal spaces to enjoy, right? Next misconception is that if I live in the city, it will reduce my commute time, those that live in the city or that work in the city. So work in the city, so I need to live there so that I'm close to work. Went to good old ChatGPT and I said, okay, I live in River North, which is a popular area of the city, and I need to get to the Willis Tower. It's 1.3 miles away, give or take, and what part of River North you're in. What would be my commute to get from River North to the Willis Tower? Walking suggests that it's gonna be 20 to 30 minutes, pretty flat, straightforward walk. It's, obviously in good weather, you get there pretty quick, so 20 to 30 minutes. Public transportation using the CTA. CTA in Chicago, red line, brown line, purple line, all that good stuff. In this case, you would have to take the red line and the brown line and then have a short walk. It'd be about 15 minutes in this case. 15 minutes, you shave about 5 to 10 minutes if you use the CTA. If you drive or use rideshare, you're also about 15-20 minutes because there's so much traffic, there's so many opportunities to get held up. It's really not much quicker if you drive, so 15 to 20 minutes. Biking, which is actually very common, they say about 10 to 12 minutes. It's a very popular commuter option. That's probably your quickest way to get there. You have, you're only a mile from work, but you're really looking at 15, 20 minutes to get there. which isn't bad, of course. When you look at the suburbs that have the metro access, which is the commuter train right into the city, not as bad as one might think. Just pulled up, okay, how long would it take to get from Downers Grove to City of Chicago, Willis Tower, using the metro? What's nice about Downers Grove is just an example, is they have an express train. You can get basically 20 miles away in the suburbs, you can get downtown in about 25, 28 minutes, which is awesome. The train has fewer stops. The express train, you get right downtown. Now, do you have a short walk from there? Absolutely. But you're looking at about 30 minutes to 35 minutes if you're going from Downers to that same location in the city. So is it longer? Yes. 10, 15, 20 minutes longer potentially. However, you're talking about 1 mile from work to 23 miles from work. Even though you're much further out and you're in the suburbs, it's not like it's gonna add exponential time to your commute. And so it's still a decent option for people that need to get into the city. Other towns to consider if you're looking to commute into the city fairly easily from the suburbs. First, that's just straight west, that's very popular. And that's also great if you want to drive into the city because all the highways right there. And areas along the western corridor like Wheaton, Glen Ellyn, it's about 45 minutes into the city. But again, these commuter trains are pretty nice. You can actually work on them and kind of hang out. It's not at all like the CTA experience, which is a little more difficult to get anything done on. And the metro is actually pretty nice. I think you should look into that if you're considering the suburbs but need to work in the city. So misconceptions, it's cheaper to live in the suburbs. Not really. It's about the same according to the data. Now, consider the HOA fees, the parking fees, all that good stuff. So the city could be more expensive for reasons. Misconception number 2, there's no space to do anything in the city. Again, these buildings do a great job of giving you bonus space to enjoy. Misconception 3, I'll minimize my commute if I live in the city. That's always the case. It's pretty difficult to get around in some parts of the city, and you could consider suburbs that have metro access to get into the city fairly easily. This video is helpful for you. We'll do more videos on this for people that are trying to figure out where they need to live or want to live around the Chicago area. Again, I'm Mike Thornton, and we'll talk to you in the next video.